What's a Volstagg from Thor Ragnarok, Frank Castle from Punisher Warzone, Gar Saxon from Star Wars Rebels, and Firefly from G.I. Joe all have in common. Ray Stevenson, of course, but we're not here to talk about Mr. Stevenson. This video is all about the history and the origin of the infamous Cobra saboteur, Firefly. Before I begin, I do want to thank you whether you're returning or it's your first time here for watching JL's Comics. Don't forget to subscribe. We do upload content just like this every week. Let's get to our video. Firefly's first action figure was available with Wave 3 in 1984, his comic book counterpart appearing the same year in the 24th issue of Larry Hama in Marvel Comics' G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. Hasbro character designer Ron Rudat spoke on Firefly. He put him in dark colors and gave him a weapon with a silencer because he's that saboteur and night fighter, someone who isn't supposed to be seen, is what Ron said. He's had many different versions of his character through the years in various waves, from his blue urban camo to green, gray, black, and even red at one point. He came packaged with a KEDRB originally and through the years various other weaponry. When he debuted, as his file card states, no one knows what Firefly's real name is or what he looks like, and it became his work that spoke his identity. His infiltration, demolition, sabotage work, his assassination wet work that preceded him and secured him work with Cobra and elsewhere. He uses explosives, poisons, gases, and all manner of small arms, even hot dogs. Yep, hot dogs. The need arises. Cobra would pay him via a bank account set up in Switzerland, identified with a number, not even a name. It wasn't until later that the mysterious face mask was lifted and we learned a little bit more about Firefly. Our story begins not during Vietnam, as many of these do, and not during the 80s, as many others do, but during World War II. In the 1940s, Japan was allied with the Axis forces, and so the other countries of Southeast Asia, and indeed all of the Asian continent, were working against the machinations of the Japanese war machine, and one such person was a plantation owner in Vietnam, part of the French Indochine colonies of the time, now known as Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. The French plantation owner ended up saving the life of a Japanese officer, an officer who happened to be the son of the Grand Master of the Koga Ninja clan, a rival clan to the Arashikage. Soon after, the plantation owner was murdered and his son was taken in by the Koga. And once he was taken in, the son never allowed anyone to see his face. No visuals, no pictures, no tapes. He was a ghost. And so he worked his way all the way up through the ranks to Hardmaster, and he took on the name Faceless Master. Although in the letter section of issue 27, Larry Hama wrote that Firefly is not a ninja. It was shortly after this upbringing that Cobra Commander reached out to Firefly for help. Cobra Commander wanted to kill the man who took the lives of his family. He wanted revenge on Snake Eyes, so he hired Firefly to infiltrate the Arashikage ninja compound to take out Snake Eyes, but Firefly realized he couldn't do it. He was no match for Snake Eyes, and so it was Firefly who leaned on Zartan to carry out the hit. This was all revealed in A Real American Hero, issue 126. But that's backstory from way ahead. The 24th issue of A Real American Hero was Firefly's comic book debut. It saw him show up with Wild Weasel. Major Blood, another mark working for Cobra, pulled in the two to track Storm Shadow's sword to the location of Cobra Commander, who was being held in the snowy, wintry peak mountains of the American Rockies. The Joes had made a prefab fortress to secure him up there, so they trailed this homing device to the Florida Everglades into a shack outside of Chokoloski to meet their newest member, Zartan. In the headquarters, Zartan says there's a celebrity in our midst, and he formally meets Firefly, and it's where we get our first look at Zartan's holographic capabilities. After a brief run-in with the Joe team in the area where Firefly fabricates a wooden whip, a Malaysian tiger gate he calls it, Destro and Baroness escaped. They left Cobra Commander stranded in Zartan's lair with Firefly, but they went back and gave Cobra Commander a rattler. So he escaped, but he left Firefly in the swamp, the miserable backstabber he called Cobra Commander, and started plotting revenge on him, along with Destro, who was left behind as well. They teamed up with Fred Broca and were able to track a G.I. Joe C-130 transport plane to discover the location of Snake Eyes compound all the way up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, thinking this would win back the favor of Cobra Commander. However, the attempt on Snake Eyes' life was thwarted by two Joes, Airborne and Spirit. They were camped out nearby. They made it to the Cobra-controlled Springfield just as young Billy Kessler marched right up to Cobra Commander's podium and attempted to gun him down. Firefly was one of the Cobra attendees at Billy's trial. All of Cobra Commander's inner circle was in attendance, but justice was not served because Storm Shadow helped Billy escape. So Hardmaster showed up in Springfield after a while, having learned who the assassin was that took out Hardmaster. Firefly, Buzzer, and Scrap Iron chased him right out of town, but they came up to a speeding freight train in a car wreck, which saw Billy, Ripcord's girlfriend named Candy Candy Apple and Softmaster in the rack. Firefly looked at them as justice about to rain down on the trio. He merely gave a thumbs down, which is an ancient gladiatorial signal for ending life. That's all they needed. Firefly's thumb down told Scrapire to fire the missiles, and so they killed Softmaster, and the blast also took out Billy's leg. A time later, Ripcord infiltrated Springfield and was able to relay the location of the secret Cobra base back to the Joes before Firefly and Scrap Iron captured him, which all culminated in a massive invasion of the town by G.I. Joe. Firefly continued mercenary work for Cobra, battled G.I. Joe around the world. As an example, in Special Mission 1, when Baroness and Firefly ram a Cobra hydrofoil into a Soviet frigate, Baroness yells, "For Cobra!" and Firefly yells, "For personal survival and the promise of riches." One special mission saw him attempt to steal a Vector fighter from an airshow, but he was stopped by Maverick. Dr. Mindbender and Firefly attempted to capture another island near Cobra Island and claim it as Cobra territory, but the Joes won, mostly because Firefly and Dr. Mindbender couldn't stop arguing. They just kept going at it with each other. Regardless, the small plot of land slipped beneath the sea, disappearing from the surface. In G.I. Joe 86, Firefly wanted to steal some valuable computers that were part of the United States government, but the original G.I. Joe, a man named General Colton, stopped him in his tracks. Eventually, the fact that Fred had taken over as Cobra was discovered when the real Cobra commander showed back up. Surprise! One of his first acts upon returning was to lock all of his enemies in a freighter under the volcano on Cobra Island, Firefly being one of them. But Firefly had a plan. He programmed a squad of bats, battle android troopers, to dig their way out through the volcanic rubble in 3 weeks. But he put his uniform on the lifeless body of Serpentor so nobody would know what he was doing. He escaped but left everyone else down there to die, and after returning to the surface, Firefly ended up leading the Red Ninja Clan in battle against Ninja Force. The Red Ninjas blamed Storm Shadow for Hardmaster's death still, and with Firefly having come from the Ninja Clan himself, he knew all their tactics and tech. Firefly had them all under his control with the help of the Brainwave Scanner, where they all set up shop on the abandoned Cobra Island along with Zarana and Cesspool. It took a G.I. Joe invasion force and Snake Eye's mind powers to free everybody from the mental control of Firefly. The Joes left, leaving Firefly to the fate of the furious force he no longer controlled. Did they kill him? Did they let him go? He was off the board after that, his fate left to the imagination of us, the fans. In Devil's Due, Firefly did resurface. Snake Eyes and his apprentice Ophelia attempted to bring the saboteur down, and they ran into Sean Collins and his Black Ops team. Firefly set off his charges, killing most of Collins' team and Ophelia in the process, and it was this death that caused Snake Eyes to no-show at his wedding. In the miniseries called Master and Apprentice, Firefly approached an undercover friend of Hauser's named Agent Provost, who was working undercover as an arms dealer when Firefly approached him, representing what he called a quote-unquote third party. They tracked him to Tokyo, which leads to this giant showdown with Jinx and Budo and Storm Shadow. Firefly, Snake Eyes were all there. Later still, a revived Serpentor actually recruited Firefly for the Coil. A lot of people died on both sides during that conflict between G.I. Joe and the Coil, but Firefly managed to escape yet again. In America's Elite, the Phoenix Guard were masquerading as heroes. The Phoenix Guard was put together and Firefly was placed on the team with the codename Snake Eater and the fake government ID Jason Lee. But this is all non-Hama, non-canon stuff. So then shortly after this, we do get back to IDW Hama. In 2008, in a comic book that came in the 25th anniversary comic packs with a story entitled Storm Shadow vs. Firefly, Backstabbed, Storm Shadow tells Firefly that he found his sister, whom he thought was dead, but Storm Shadow tells him that she was a prisoner being held in the south of France. In the continuation of Volume 1, and with issue 167, we actually see Firefly return to the field. It's the same issue where Sergeant Major and Darklon seemingly return from the dead. Their rather bold plan is to launch an assault on the Chrysler Building in New York City, which happens to be where Colton's headquarters was located. So Firefly and Crystal Ball, they infiltrate the skyscraper, while the Night Creepers take an aerial approach via 2 helos, but Baroness and Destro scared them off. The 2 inside are left to deal with Colton, Mainframe, and G.I. Jane on their own. In their escape, Firefly shot Colton center mass, but he had on a ballistic vest, so he was saved, and it was G.I. Jane that finally takes Firefly out. It looked like Firefly might have survived, but it turned out that this guy that suddenly debuted was actually a new Blue Ninja, not Firefly. And Firefly's been off the board since then. Firefly did appear in the Sunbow cartoon voiced by Greg Berger, who also voiced Grimlock, Stockade, Long Haul for Transformers, as well as Ripcord, Spirit, Colonel Brekov of the October Guard, and Skip-a-Stone, codename Cutter. He was seen in Revenge of the Cobra. He was also using his sabotage skills in another episode by pouring acid in the fuel lines of the Joe's Sky Strikers. He was seen in another episode with flamethrowers, sometimes flying the trouble bubbles, and also sabotaging Joe's again with things like melted snow and explosives, but he doesn't say a whole lot. In Sigma 6, Firefly was on the G.I. Joe team, but later revealed to be a mole spy. In Renegades, Firefly was an arsonist, appropriate given his codename Firefly. In 1984, he was seen in a TV commercial for the water moccasin, which is a vehicle we saw him driving in the Cold Slither episode. And he's a boss level villain in a few of the G.I. Joe video games, which are fun to play. And that, my friends, is it for this one. As always, look forward to your thoughts, comments, and questions and corrections down below. Feel free to subscribe to be a part of all of our videos, new and old, and share this with your friends. It helps you, it helps me, and you know what? It helps the algorithm too. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.